What's the difference between JKA ATM, Jeremy Krauss approach abilities through movement, and Feldenkrais awareness through movement?
I studied and taught the Feldenkrais method for over 40 years. I directly trained with Dr. Feldenkrais when I was quite young, in my early 20s. I'm now in my early 60s. And his thinking had a great impression upon me in many ways in the development of my career and development of all my work, and particularly Jeremy Krauss approach, which I call it now. And I would say in abilities through movement or awareness through movement, you have to find a way for yourself to learn to attend to yourself in movement in a certain way that listens to certain needs that you have for your own self-regulation, so that you don't copy anybody in movement, and you can listen to your sensation of what gives you a pleasant sensation, how to connect to yourself parts and a whole, how to change the types of efforts that you make while you do movement, how to understand different types of rhythms that you do, how to respect your limits. The basis of both of these is that you have to learn how to attend to yourself in a particular way. For me, attending to oneself is an ability in and of itself. So you have the how of what you do, which means the listening, the type of listening and engagement with oneself. And then there's, I would say, the what of what you do, the mechanics of how you put together with yourself. I thought that, okay, awareness is one thing, but to have the ability to listen, to have the ability to change, to make decisions for yourself, I wanted to broaden the way that the thinking of learning through self-movement was done. And I stopped making a very big emphasis on only one way of speaking when it's taught, one way of having people use themselves. And I found that people needed, because it fit my ideas, to be able to find for themselves, for whatever stage of adult personal development they were, to do it the way that they wanted to, okay? And not the way that somebody else would say, this is a type of way that you need to listen to yourself. So when I teach abilities through movement, I don't teach one way in the learning how to do it for yourself, one way to listen. Because some people don't have an easy time listening to themselves in certain ways. That's a very broad domain. And other people, they really want to deeply just listen to themselves. And it's important to not push one person into one direction and put another person into another direction. I like to categorize things, and I like to sort of analyze them so I can understand them more. And when I watched students that I was teaching, I would say, if I only taught in one way, thinking this is the way to learn it, then I would find that many people would get left out. Feldenkrais, in his awareness through movement lessons, he had very specific lessons, and his sort of style of using his methodology to create his lessons. By being versed in those lessons, at a certain point, I realized, well, yeah, I also have a style, and I understand what the mechanics of change are and what the mechanics of his methodologies are to create differences for people so they can sense, feel, move, emote, think, whatever they like differently. And then I started to play around with staying away from specific configurations that he used in very specific ways, and starting to develop my own ways of putting configurations of movements together. Because when you study movement sciences, the skeleton has certain amounts of degrees of freedom and ways that it can move, the joints, the ligaments. You study how the muscles move and what they do, and the tendons and what the nervous system, the different parts of it. How you bring it into the practicality so somebody can make and get up and say, oh, this feels different for me. Some will fail, oh, I feel more relaxed, I feel calmer in myself. I'm not as stressed. That's a change. Some people will feel, I feel super energized, I want to go out and run. This is a wonderful thing. Certain people will say, my leg feels better. I don't have back pain anymore. I can sit longer in the office. I can perform better in bed. I don't know why, but because blah, 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 whatever they have to say. So people will take what is done through however they will do the movements, the how of the movements, and the use of the mechanics, which creates the change in the movements themselves. I think to boil it down, what I would say is, yes, you have to learn, each individual has to learn a way to listen what's best for themselves when they move. It's not the same for everybody. So it has to be taught. It has to be taught in different rhythms, different tonalities of voice, different attention spans that you give people, deeper attention, lighter attention, diffuse attention, all different categories of use of the attention. And so that people can find their ways most easily through the movements. So you have to get to the movements themselves. What each person does with the movements, if they do them softer, if they do them harder, if they need to go micro movements so that they can connect in some way, and other people get annoyed by this and they have to do very large, fast movements, otherwise they don't feel they can connect. So this is something I think that's very different than awareness through movement and abilities through movement, is the pedagogy of how you teach it, the how of the teaching. The next is, what are the lessons? So all the movements that I put into the lessons, they're very different. They're unique to my own creations. It's not that I'm making creative movement lessons in any kind of way. I'm following the types of, I would say, the mechanics of change, which is something that I'm going to be doing in a workshop. And I will discuss all these types of mechanics of change. The next is in the pedagogy and the teaching of teachers, is how to understand the mechanics of change and the use of the self from the very beginning of when you're trained, so that you understand how to create basic lessons and develop themes for creating change with people from the very beginning, by yourself, on your own. It's not that you don't need a script. Yes, you learn how to play the piano and you can play other people's music, but you learn how to create your own music and why it goes together. I like to think mathematically, and I think a lot about the abilities through movement as mathematics and how things get put together. I found that once you start to be able to present it in this way, it becomes very novel for people. So my experience when people do the lessons that I teach, even if they've been doing for the Feldenkrais method and awareness through movement for 25 years, they say, wow, this feels new. This is like enlivening. I haven't had this before. It wakes me up a little bit more. And novelty is certainly is an ability that you have to have, how to create novelty for people. And novelty is one of the things, and the brain loves novelty. It doesn't like, rudimentary things and the repetition it also loves, but it likes to have novelty every once in a while.
You spoke to this some already, but thoughts on why you don't emphasize specifically reducing effort, that you talk about this range of, you could have more effort, you could have less effort, and how that is different than in the Feldenkrais approach, this emphasis on really reducing effort.
It's a great question, Tiffany. Thank you. The idea of reducing effort, I found, became very misunderstood and very misinterpreted. And as a way to always do something. My particular understanding of the use that Dr. Feldenkrais had of reducing effort was so people could learn how to sense types of differences in sensation. And that was that without sensing a difference or being able to understand a difference, think a difference, feel a difference, you don't have basis for comparison. And you don't have a basis. If you don't have a basis to compare for yourself, you lose sort of a certain door to self-learning. So I found that the reduction of effort became more, people used it as a value of constantly, you have to reduce your effort, and it almost became like a lifestyle. But I found that it has a value as a tool to learn. And then once you learn it, you can use it in whatever way that you want. You might want to try to increase your effort. Do you become more sensitive in that? If you increase your speed in a certain way, if you rush while you're increasing your speed, or you don't feel rushed when you're increasing your speed, how do you manage your effort? It's like you have to be able to play music at all different tempos and all different moods and all different speeds. So reduction of effort is an important learning tool as an opening to listening to the self to be able to sense differences. You need to be able to learn how to do that. Once you do, you can reduce more, you can reduce less, you can increase your effort a lot, you can reduce it, you can use it. It goes always back to using something the way you want to for your own needs at a particular time. Engaging in something when you want to engage, when you know how you're engaging, engage the way you want. When you know how to attend the way that you want. Okay? Because I found anything that minimizes creates, again, a habit that you don't know is useful or not. So if the reduction of effort, for many people, reduction of effort to learn at the beginning is extraordinarily important because it helps them come in contact with themselves in a very particular way. Once they have that, sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And I found out by doing it this way, more people seem to be able to grab onto the work. Other people would say, yeah, but what about this and what about that? And then they try and they found, oh, yes, I can do this as well. And I can do that as well. And I can do a third way and a fourth way.
Yeah, I really appreciate the invitation of the options, the way that you present it, more, less, harder, softer. Then it feels like it invites more space for me to find my own way. And I'm just really appreciating that.
Absolutely. That creates a space for learning.